A few weeks ago, we released our 100th episode, an inside look at our destination wedding at Casa de Campo. But today's episode is a little different. It's not about points and miles, but instead, this is the episode you'll want to save or share with anyone you know who's even thinking about planning a destination wedding. Because today, we're sitting down with the person who made ours possible, our destination wedding planner, Mario. We're pulling back the curtain on the entire process, what a great planner actually does, what couples tend to overlook, how contracts, room blocks, vendor selection, budgets, timelines, and logistics really work, and why this isn't something that you're going to want to DIY. If the 100th episode was the story, well then this is the strategy. A practical, real-world guide to what it takes to plan a destination wedding the right way. This is the episode to send to your engaged friends and tell them to hit play. Welcome to the Revolutionizing Your Journey podcast. I am your host, DeAndre Koch, along with my wife and co-host, Taryn Gisbert, and we've got a fantastic episode ready for all of you all today. Before we introduce our guests, who we are super excited to have on the show, a couple of quick reminders we always want to put out there. You can catch all of these episodes in their full entirety on our YouTube channel at Boldly Go World. But also, for those that watch on YouTube, we do have our up-to-date travel points and miles news. That's called our Quick Hits that comes out every single Friday, a much more shortened version of travel points and miles news, if you want to call it that, as well as our Boldly Go Travels channel on YouTube, which has more of our vlog style videos, hotel reviews, resort reviews, destinations, all those different things. Now, we are excited to bring a amazing guest in front of all of you all today. We have Mario. Mario is with Destination Weddings Expert. He's going to get into who he is, but he was the catalyst. He was the one who put together our amazing wedding that we had back in episode 100 that we talked about. We promised we'd have him on the show. Mario, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, thank you so much for having me. I feel like it's maybe the catalyst, but it was a shared vision that brought everything together. I really had a fun time working on it.
Me too. I'm so happy to have you on here and to talk about non-wedding planning for me, because I can relax now things. But I think it's so important that we can share more about like what we learned from you in this process. So I'm really excited that everyone gets to meet you too.
I'm so excited. Let's do it.
Absolutely. And don't forget, everyone, wherever you're listening or watching this, don't forget to give us a like, subscribe, and we leave a 5-star rating. We'd love if you leave a 5-star rating and review. So Mario, let's just jump into this. How did you become a destination wedding planner to start?
So my story is a little bit different than other advisors' stories. I actually came from an advertising background. I was in advertising for 15 years. My husband started Destination Weddings Expert about 16 years ago. Unfortunately, we lost him unexpectedly in February of 23. But luckily, the year before I had come into the business, I was working on the operations and working on all of our processes and all of our systems and making sure that everything was documented, that it was efficient, and that we were improving on them. So when February of 23 came around, I was able to take over the business, jump in the driver's seat running, and the rest is history.
Got it. Well, really appreciate you sharing that background. Sorry about the passing of your husband at that time, but you've really been able to continue to build and create an amazing experience. I know for Taryn and myself, it really felt, it was so thorough, right, Taryn?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've been in a lot of weddings and I have seen brides with planners, no planners, DIY, like everything, doing everything themselves. I knew that that was not something that was for me. And I'm so glad I made that call.
Yes, I remember asking Taryn, I was like, okay, so I know a lot of women have like their wedding binder of like this dream wedding that they've put together since they were a kid. I was like, so let me see yours. And basically you were just like, yeah.
I laughed at you for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Just like I did actually with the guy on site who was like, send me your Pinterest board. I was like, nope. This is a, wait and see kind of thing. And it's going to be somewhere else. And I feel like that makes it easier. Would you agree?
We always talk about in the business about identifying who our ideal client is, who we want to work with, where our joy comes from in this business. And I do have to say that most of my clients are like that. most of my clients don't have the Pinterest board. They want to just get away with their friends and family and have an amazing time and, have it be that beautiful picturesque moment. But if I go on and ask anyone for a Pinterest board, I think I get laughs more than I get actual Pinterest boards.
That makes me feel better.
Yes.
Well, Mario, what type of weddings do you actually specialize in? Because destination wedding, I'm sure, has many, many facets to it. I mean, from castles in Scotland to, tropical islands and everything in between. So what do you really specialize in the destination wedding field? Is that a good question to ask?
No, it's an amazing question, because if you go out there and you just search destination wedding planner, you're going to get a whole skew of people all the way across the spectrum, right? So my specialty is Mexico and the Caribbean. And when we're looking at resort wise, first of all, it's always all inclusive. Very rarely do I ever work with an EP hotel. EP is European plan, meaning that, everything's not included, everything's a la carte. And then I also, when we're looking at the types of resorts, it's mid to upper luxury resorts that we mainly work with. It'll all depend on the couple, on their vision and what their budget is. But for the most part, I'm able to identify before we even have our initial consultation if I think it's going to be a good fit between me and the couple that we're looking to work with.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm glad that we were able to fit in with what you consider to be a good fit as well.
Well, he was referred. I didn't just have to comb through the internet.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
He was referred by another friend in the wedding industry from Long Island that I know does videography and everything at AJ. So that was actually how I found you. He connected me with you. So I'm very appreciative.
And AJ's phenomenal. I was so happy when he made that introduction. It was an easy, quick fit.
What's funny is the fact that because we went through, roughly a year and a half plus of wedding planning, and now we're, as of this recording, about a month, almost 2 months past the wedding itself. It's been almost a 2-year process from those initial conversations. So to think back to all of that is really kind of recapping a lot of the things that we were able to do. So Mario, my question before we start getting into why even use a destination wedding planner, what's your philosophy with destination wedding planning, and what do you think a lot of couples kind of underestimate the most when getting into seeing if this is for them?
It's my philosophy when it comes to the wedding is try and remember that the reason you chose a destination wedding is because you want to spend more time than just the wedding and just the ceremony with your group. So it's try and look at it as an overall week experience, something like that as a whole, and what you want your group to experience. Because if you just go in strictly with that Pinterest board mindset of this is exactly what I want, you might be excluding some of your guests that are taking their one vacation that they get to have out of the year to join you for your destination wedding. Not all of us get to travel as often as we do. And so those, when you're doing that one vacation, you want to make sure that you're taking into consideration what their vacation is going to look like, what their experience is going to look like, without actually sacrificing your vision for your wedding and what you want to experience as well.
Perfect. I think that's a fantastic idea, or not idea, but a fantastic notion to think through, because yes, not everyone is a wedding planner, a destination wedding planner, or points and miles travelers, right? Like you said, the fact that this could be their one trip of the year that they're taking, especially, for a wedding like, Taryn and myself, this was one without kids, right? And so people have to kind of plan around that, maybe a little bit different than they usually do. So I can completely understand why you'd say that.
Absolutely. And I think, one of the things that couples underestimate the most when they're looking to do a destination wedding, there's all this information out there saying that you can get a destination wedding for free, or it is going to be cheaper than in the States, or things like that. And yes, it can be more cost efficient than in the States, depending on where in the States that you're looking at. But this is not a free wedding. This is not a low investment. You do need to come in with a realistic budget in mind. And that's really where your destination wedding planner comes in, is to really set those expectations, let you know what to expect, and let you know where you fall in that spectrum.
And all of our travel experience did not help us, because I did a little research before I got the introduction to you. And I have to say, you cannot just try to book something for 50 plus people. It is just madness. And I immediately was like, I need help. I need to talk to someone, because we can't use our knowledge for a wedding. None of it translates.
I think one of the biggest mistakes that couples can make is trying to plan your wedding the way that you plan your individual trip. individual travel is nothing like a group travel. And, when you're looking into, we'll talk a little bit about the contracts and what all that looks like. When you're looking at all of that, it really can, you can make some very expensive mistakes if you try and plan it like your individual vacation.
No, that makes perfect sense because it is a completely different world, which I think that makes it a perfect segue for essentially asking you, Mario, what does a planner actually do versus what people think they do?
Yes. I always say this, and this might get edited out. And, I feel like I either offend people or get people on board with me when I say this, but I am not Frank from Father of the Bride. I am not your big gay wedding planner that is out there and, I'm selecting the flowers and I'm presenting, the color palette. And that's not my role in this position. And I think the other thing that couples should look for when they're trying to find the right fit for them is, what services are you looking for? Because you can speak to me and you can speak to any of my colleagues, and what I offer versus what they offer can be very different, and it ranges widely, right? So the first thing that you should need to be doing as a couple when you're looking at a destination wedding is figuring out what you want help with. Do you want me on the emails, negotiating with the vendors, negotiating with the hotel? Do you want me, selecting color palettes? If you do, I might not be the best fit, and that's okay. It's trying to figure out who the planner is that you want to work with, and then going down the research hole of trying to find out who that person is and how to find them. So then I think the other thing that, you need to look for when you're looking for a destination wedding planner is, what are their services when it relates to travel? Because sometimes we're looking at just the planner. You want someone to plan the wedding for you and make sure that everything is picturesque and beautiful. And you also need to be thinking about how you're going to get 100 of your closest people to whatever destination that you choose, and make sure you get them from the airport to the hotel safely, make sure that their rooms are all correct, and make sure that they sent the right dates for the flights compared to the dates that the hotel has confirmed for them, right?
That's really interesting. So from a back end standpoint, right, I know for our experience with Taryn and myself, it was you not researching, but basically providing a lot of options at first before we settled on Casa de Campo. And how much of that is a reliance on perhaps your network, the people that you're connected with directly, tied to the goals of the couple? I know, of course, obviously it has to come down to the goals of the couple. We had talked about this a little bit on that episode. We were trying to go for a New Year's party, which I think none of us realized how hard what that was going to be. But how much of it is tied to like, hey, this is who I'm used to working with versus this is who, I think is going to be fitting what your expectations are. Does that make sense? Kind of like, how do you connect those two together?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think what our couples don't realize is that my vetting process on if I'm going to be a good fit for you or not actually starts way before they realize. So when you first decide that you're going to engage with me, it's the first thing I ask you to do is schedule time on my calendar. And it seems like such an innocent ask, but actually when you're going in and you're scheduling time on my calendar, you're filling out an entire survey of all the information that I think I'm going to need to make sure that I'm a good fit for you before we even get on the call. There are questions in that questionnaire that I can look at and say, you know what, guys, before we even jump on the phone together, I'm going to reach out and say, hey, I don't think I might be the best fit. I probably know someone who would be. And then I can refer you out from there. Or you answer the questions and I look at it and I say, okay, I know for sure that based on what you provided in your answers here, we can go ahead and have a conversation about what your vision is and where we're going to look. And then the rest of it is just experience in the industry. Some of it is, there are properties that I know I work well with planning. So I know I can deliver on a great experience in that front. And so you are probably going to get some of those in my recommendations that I send over. And then there's going to be properties that I know, hey, they have this experience and this couple is looking for something so unique. They want, over a cenote with, a glass platform. I know properties that can deliver on that. And so maybe I don't plan with them as often, but we're going to go with that because I know it's going to work best.
I love what you said about finding like a fit. I feel like professionally, DeAndre, and I can both also agree with that. Like as a career coach and him as a financial advisor, a lot of times you want to make sure you're a good match for their goals, your personality, and you don't want to mismatch. And I've also had consults where I'm like, I think I can refer you to someone that would be a better fit,
Mm-hmm.
and I could definitely relate with that. And we got very lucky.
We did. It's super important that you have those transparent conversations in the beginning, because if your personalities don't mix in the beginning, it's only going to get worse from there, right? When things start to get stressful, and it doesn't matter, the best planning in the world will still get stressful at some point. And, when things start to get stressful, you need to know that you mix well, you think alike with the person that you're working with, because I'm going to be the one that's out there cracking the whip with the vendors, cracking with the whip with the hotel, right? You need to make sure that you have someone that's going to represent you the way that you want to be represented.
Well, Mario, we're going to get into like how the process works here in just a little bit, but why would I want to add an additional cost into the process when most of these resorts out there have a wedding planner on site? Why wouldn't I just want to work with them? Why would I involve someone adding another step into the process?
Absolutely. And that's a completely legit question. And when we're looking at why you want to pay my fee, because even, like we said, there's other people like me out there, they don't charge fees at all. And so you need to figure out, do you want someone who doesn't charge a fee? Do you want someone who does charge a fee? And what does that look like? The value in working with me is not only just the processes that, yes, I'm going to book the travel for your guests. Yes, I'm going to walk you through the planning process. I also invest in myself and my team. And so we go down, we have a policy in our company called We Go So You Know. And what that means is that I am never going to refer you to a property that I've not been to myself, that I've not experienced myself, that I know can deliver on the experience that I would expect for my couples.
That's amazing. I love that.
It's important because there's so many people that are out there like, oh, we'll send you to whatever property. We don't need to name. We don't need to be nasty and name names.
We don't want to piss off any future sponsors, so that's a good call.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. We don't want to send you to whatever property, and just because you're trying to hit a price point, and I've never been there, but I know it hits the price point, that's not going to work. There's so many obstacles along the way that we need to overcome. When you work with us, and I'm sending you to a property, I have a relationship with that property. I know the wedding team personally. I've met them. I've shook their hands. And that means that when, push comes to shove and I need to lean on them a little bit, I'm comfortable doing it. And I can go in and I can make sure that we are, having open and frank conversations about, hey, this needs to happen. This hasn't happened yet. You promised this on the last call. Let's make sure we get this across the finish line. And of course, in front of our couples, it's a very nice conversation. And behind the scenes, it's a little bit more of aggressive conversation, right? But I think that's something that comes with experience in the industry. Just like you would pay, a lawyer a service fee, just like you would pay, a doctor their fee. This profession comes with a level of professionalism, and it comes with a level of experience that only grows over time. And so that's charging that fee ensures that you are going to get that level of experience, that you're going to get, the professionalism that you would expect as the couple.
Yeah, I can resonate with that pretty highly. Taryn, as you said, there's a lot of similarities with Taryn, what you do, myself.
Well, we all do, yeah.
Right, as an advisor, and of course what you're doing, Mario, as well, because I've very similarly, I've invested in building a very high quality team for our practice. And yes, we charge our clients fees, especially on the financial planning side, not just for wealth management and other things, but we do that to deliver a high level of service to them. That fee allows us to be able to do and be able to give our time and our energy and our attention to them. And in the same breath, the same way that you have said, I've gone to these properties, I know what it's like. A lot of the things that I personally recommend that people do in their personal planning, I'm like, hey, I'm doing this myself. My wife and I, we're doing these things ourselves, right? So there's conviction and there's belief around that. And I think that's absolutely, absolutely important and shows the level of dedication you've given to your craft.
And the relationships are everything. So that made all the difference.
In the end, when we really need to get things across the finish line and make sure that we know, that someone magically forgets something, that's when that happens, those relationships make all the difference. And it really helps us to, say, hey, we're going to get this answer and I'm going to make sure that they deliver on it. And if they don't, we're going to find out why. And there's a lot of that happens in weddings, right? There's so many moving parts. You need to make sure that everything is kind of buttoned up across the board.
And there's a lot of that you did and phone calls that you made and follow up that you did, which was fantastic. Which brings me to the process part, right? We talked about the start. There's the questionnaire. Are you even a good fit? So we've gotten past that piece. We've decided, hey, this is a good fit. What's next? Where does the process go from here?
So we've decided you're a good fit. The next thing we do is we jump on that call and we have our consultation. And during the consultation, there's actually like 5 main sections that I talk about on there. It's very structured, even though I try to keep it, a casual conversation. It's who we are, who DWE is. It's who you are as a couple and what your vision is for your big day. Do you understand what a room block is? Because when you're signing a room block, you're technically signing $100,000-$200,000 contract that you're on the hook for as a couple and I'm on the hook for as the agency. So we need to understand that, what that process looks like. I'm going to show you my processes so you understand what the process looks like throughout planning. And then we're going to talk about what this all costs, final cost for everything, right? So we go through that, we do the consultation, and then once we're done with the consultation, we're dive in, and the first thing we're going to do is start looking at locations. We want to figure out, okay, where is the majority of your guests coming from? Where is, logistically easiest for them to get into? There's a lot of, couples out there that want all these amazing, some of the smaller islands. And yes, for those, individual vacations, that's great. For 100 of your closest people coming in and flying in and trying to get there, logistically, those locations are a little bit harder. So we'll start to figure out where's the best location to get your guests to. And then from there, we start breaking down the properties, start looking at which property can deliver on the vision that you told me about, which property is going to hit the price point, not only that you have for your wedding budget, but also you have for your guest. How much, part of my questionnaire is, how much do you think you want your guests to spend? And so we're going to start there, and we're going to make sure that the properties can deliver on that as well. And then we start breaking down wedding packages, making sure the wedding package fits, make sure it delivers everything that you need in your vision. And then we start securing wedding dates, getting room block quotes, and signing the room block contract.
So what's the timeline that a couple really should be looking at ideally? I know for us, again, we had started almost about 2 years out because we were actually looking at New Year's this year. So when we had started, I believe it was early 2024. And so that would have been about a 2-year timeline. But what's the range of time that you think someone should be starting to reach out to you? Is it like, oh, I proposed today, let's bring in Mario tomorrow? Like, what should that look like?
I am so glad you asked that question, because this year, especially, the entire wedding industry is upside down. Its timelines are completely different than they used to be. And it does affect a lot of these groups more than you think. It's kind of going back to what I was saying before about your wedding guests. This might be their one vacation that they can take a year, right? And so if you're reaching out to me 6 months before your wedding and you want to start planning a destination wedding, first of all, the planning timeline is going to be a little tight, right? But I can deliver on that. We have the relationships, we have the knowledge. I'm not too concerned about that. But your guests aren't planning on spending, dropping $2,000 at the, drop of a dime. And the way that a room block contract is structured, we're paying a lot sooner than you would pay for your individual reservation, right? So if we're getting married in, November of 2026, your final payment is actually June, July of 2026, right? And so we really want to try and make sure that we're giving people enough time to book. That's the biggest thing. If you're looking to give everyone a proper timeline, you should be at about the year mark to about 18 months prior to your wedding is when you should be starting the planning.
Another great point about timing is we had a couple of people that had to get their passports. It was their first time leaving the country. So if you're actually going to leave the country, that's not something that you can control in terms of how fast they get their passport. That's all government dependent and depends on the timing.
Yeah, it depends on the timing. The government sometimes moves quicker, sometimes it moves slower, and you have no way of controlling that or knowing that. So I always tell people, 2 to 3 months is what you should give yourself to get a new passport, but sometimes it's 4 to 6 months. And as soon as you know that you're going out of the country, you need to make sure you have that passport.
I was really surprised about the room blocks. The contract in general, like the packages looked great. I was like, oh, great. They have everything I need. And then once we got to the contract, I was like, oh, I really have no idea what I'm doing. I am so grateful that I have somebody to help me. Is that a normal reaction?
It is. And even for advisors, these contracts change, constantly, right? That's whatever the hotel policy is, whatever they're working on at that time, it reflects that within the contract. So every time that we receive a new room block contract, those things are 10, 12 pages long. And I'm in there and I'm taking each one of the sections, especially the sections that I know are going to be important for us and protecting ourselves, protecting you guys, protecting the timeline. We're going in there and we're breaking those down word by word to make sure that everything is reading the way that it needs to. I think, one of the biggest things in a room block contract is something called attrition. And attrition means that this is the date that you're going to say, hey, we are guaranteeing this amount of revenue for the hotel, this many nights, this many rooms. And if you start canceling at that point, now there's significant penalties that are involved, right? So when I said in the beginning that, you're signing a contract for $200,000, you really are. And you need to make sure that you're partnering with the correct company that's going to protect you along the way so that you're not getting a bill in the end for something that you're not using.
Yeah, I think that's really insightful because I know we didn't end up, I think, having this issue, but it was really interesting when we were talking through, okay, we picked this X amount of rooms to book at the hotel, and then you guys were constantly updating us on how many had been full or filled, and then what we had kind of left, and then we ended up not having any left, but basically having a game plan in place that, hey, by X, Y, and Z date, and I remember we had a system of certain dates, we were planning if we had not had them filled to start dropping them off so that we aren't getting hit for that bill. Because I know you said, this is $100,000 to $200,000 contract. I think for some people, like, well, wow, $200,000 wedding. No, you're just booking out 30, 40, 50 rooms across anywhere from 3 to 7 days can add up to be $200,000. And you're right. You don't really think about how daunting of a commitment that is until there's legal paperwork that you guys sign in front of you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, it is always my job and always my best interest to advocate for our couples. That's what we do. And we make sure that is, always top of mind when we're having these conversations. But I think, what a lot of people don't realize is you also have to think about the hotel's position in this. They are blocking off 40, 50 rooms from their hotel. When we're looking at Casa de Campo, in the hotel itself, it's only a 300-room hotel. So you're asking them to block that off for, 6 to 8 months. During your booking window. You want to make sure that you're either delivering on that or releasing the rooms in enough time for them to go ahead and sell those rooms and book up the hotel as they would normally do.
Hey everyone, quick break from the episode. If you're enjoying the show, make sure you're subscribed on whatever platform you're listening on so you never miss an episode. And if you've gotten any value so far, it would mean the world if you left a quick rating or review. It helps more people discover the show and keeps us motivated to keep creating great content. Also, if you're feeling stuck or want help with points and miles, whether it's picking your first card, planning a big redemption, or even having someone book it all for you, we've got you covered. There's a link in the show notes to schedule a free points and miles consultation. Just fill out a quick questionnaire, tell us your goals, and we'll take it from there. And don't forget, our newsletter and private Facebook group are great ways to stay on top of breaking news, updated card offers, and tips that don't always make it into the podcast. You'll find those links in the show notes as well. Now, back to the episode. Now, you mentioned attrition being really important. Is there anything else that you can think of before we move on? Because I know we could spend forever talking about contracts.
We could.
But is there anything else that couples often overlook, or maybe you find that when they're working with someone less experienced in this world, they often overlook when the contract kind of phase, whether it's not just a document itself, but that kind of phase of planning?
The contract itself, you also want to look at a section called comps and concessions. And, you can look at it one or two ways. First of all, comps and concessions are basically the amount of money that you're going to get back after travel based on the room block that you booked. But really, this is a tool that the couple can use to budget for their wedding. Depending on where you're looking, an inexperienced advisor might take you to a so-and-so hotel. They might not realize that you've booked over blackout dates. And now you don't have any incentive to book your guests within the room block, and your guests don't have any incentive to book within the room block. And as you guys know, some of these hotels charge for people that are booked outside the room block. It can get really expensive if guests go completely rogue and just start booking on their own. It's, again, unnecessary expenses that come into your wedding that that takes away from your decor, that takes away from your floral, takes away from extra events that you get to do with your guests. And so you really need to be strategic about some of these comps and concessions that are in the contract to make sure that it is within industry standards and to make sure that it's fair to both you and to your guests.
And the outside vendor fees, too, being aware of those.
Outside vendor fees. And hotels are really getting strict with this these days, and I understand why. What used to be like we'll charge you a $250 outside vendor fee is now a $2,000 outside vendor fee. And they're starting to do it because, first of all, there's new regulations in DR and in Mexico that require these vendors to have insurance to even be able to get on site. So that's now we're talking about bringing higher end vendors on site to be able to do that. And we want to make sure that we're not wasting time trying to get someone to send us their insurance information The ones that are vetted, they already know that they have the insurance. And then the other piece of it is you want a vendor that knows the property, especially with a property like yours. When we're talking about, Martin for photography, Martin knows Casa de Campo, and that property, you have to know every nook and cranny, and it's 7,000 acres that you have to know. That, we know we can go here for a good picture, we can go here for the right angle, we can go here for the right lighting. We want to make sure that we have someone that's going to be efficient in that, because an outside vendor who doesn't work at that property often is now going to slow down your entire day because they're trying to figure things out along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a perfect segue, Taryn, because I want to talk through the finding of vendors in general, and also, for sake of time, kind of move that into the site visit aspect as well. I know for Taryn and myself, we signed the contract, the room block. We did all the things before ever stepping foot in Casa de Campo. I know, Taryn, you went 20 years ago on a family trip, but before us seeing it from the viewpoint of, we're going to have a wedding here. Is that normal? Do other couples, do they tour properties first before signing the contract, meet the vendors first before agreeing? Did we do it backwards? Did we do it forwards? What are your thoughts there?
I would say that probably 90% of our couples do it exactly the way that you guys did it. Realistically, it's hard to go and site tour a lot of these properties and, get the conversation moving. There's a little bit of trust that is going to have to go into your, wedding advisor, making sure that they are making the proper recommendations, that they've asked the right questions to make the proper recommendations along the way. We will place you at the right property, but I still always recommend that site visit. There is so much more that gets done when you're on site, when you get to see the level of service, when you get to see where the ceremony and the cocktail and the reception are going to be. And then you can make shifts and adjustments however you need to, so that the day runs as smooth as possible. There's only so much that I can do, when we're working remotely and we're having our calls. There's only so much that I can do to set the level of expectation. But an on-site visit is going to make a night and day difference on you being prepared, you feeling ready. I just had a couple recently who they took personal vacation to a property, loved it, signed a room block contract, insisted that we go to this property even though I advised against it, and then ended up taking a $5,500 hit because they did the site visit and were like, oh, but when it comes to the wedding, it's completely different. And so they canceled at that property, moved to another property, and that still was the better move than trying to force it at the other property.
Wow. And I know in our episode, back in episode 100, Taryn and I talked about our site visit.
We got into detail. And how much we recommend it, we appreciate it, and how they tried to kill us with delicious food, and we were not hungry enough as much as we tried, but it was delicious.
I've never showed up to something so hungry and left still so full, and there was still more food, and it was, as you, Taryn said, tried to kill us by feeding us too much.
And especially the food at Casa de Campo, you can't go wrong there. It's so good.
It absolutely was. Mario, let's talk the kind of final month logistics, right? So we're a month out from the wedding. What are the things that, you want to be aware of, that you're looking at, that from your lens, the couple's lens, what are these things that, should be on the radar?
Absolutely. So really, when we're down to the final 30 days, at this point, we should have all of our main logistics locked in, ready to go. You should be signed off on your DJ, your photographer, your hair and makeup. That actually should have been done a while before that, right? We want to make sure when we're doing a destination wedding, they're working with a master account. You want to make sure that master account is closed and it's ready to go, so that we're not incurring, there's some properties that have some fees once you get under 30 days. If you're still making changes, if you're still, deciding on things. Then, this is the time where we're starting to get into some of the nitty gritty details. We're working on finalizing seating charts. We're working on finalizing songs to, walk down the aisle, songs, the absolutely play and the do not play for the DJ, right? All of those details that we've just kind of been, you can get to it later. Okay, now's the time. 30 days, we're at it and we're doing it. On the back end, my team is submitting the rooming list to the hotel, because at this point, it's just a shell of a room block. There's 40 rooms that we know we're going to use, and we know what types they are, but we don't know what, who's sleeping where. We're now submitting that to the hotel. They're starting to assign rooms to each of the guests. And then this is where, when guests are starting to make last minute changes, either under 30 days, they're like, I'm going to bring this person instead of that person, or I'm going to, I'm changing the number of people I'm having in my room. That's actually where it starts to get dangerous, and it starts to look sloppy on our end because we submitted the rooming list 30 days ago. And now guests are starting to make changes, and it gets confusing at check-in because the front desk doesn't always get the same updates that the group sales department gets. So that's why, when we build out our contracts with you guys, we say, hey, after 30 days, there's a $50 per person, change fee. And we do that because we're really just trying to get you not to make the change, because we can charge the fee, but we still can't guarantee that the change is going to be made. So at that 30-day mark, we're really trying to get all the final details buttoned up and make sure that you're ready to go, with your stuff. If there's anything that you ordered off of Etsy, has that been delivered? If, is the dress tailored? Is the suit tailored? Like, that's at this point, we are just trying to make sure that everything is set so that you guys can grab your luggage and go.
Yeah, I think there's so much that is involved. And, a few months out, people were like, how's the wedding planning going? I was like, yeah, I mean, we checked off all the big stuff, but the nitty gritty are all the things that kind of are both occupy your time, but also your mental space as well, because you're trying to think through all the things. I know, Taryn, I mean, the wedding, not stress level, but just the on your mind, right? It's on all of our minds.
No, we can say stress level. I was stressed. I mean, it definitely aided in the weight loss to make sure I fit in my dress. But, I have to pick what's the father-daughter song for our first dance. And, me and my dad have to agree on a song. And I mean, there's just so many small things. And then like the transportation, which, I mean, you were a lifesaver for. I mean, there's so many small things that like I know if we had tried to do this on our own, we would have royally messed up.
And the fact that we're checking the weather from 2 weeks out to see if it was supposed to rain that day, every single day by the hour, checking to see if it's changed. I mean, it's a constant cycle of just follow up and follow up and follow up.
I can't tell you the number of times I checked my weather app for you guys' wedding week. I was literally like every 2 hours I was checking, like nothing popped up, because in the Caribbean it can pop up out of nowhere, right? I was constantly checking that thing, and there was such a huge sigh of relief as we started getting through the week, and things were looking pretty good.
The only day that we were there that it didn't rain at all during the day, which, hey, we'll take it.
10 out of 10.
It was 10 out of 10. Mario, I know we got to start wrapping up here, but from a planning standpoint, I know for Taryn and myself, we had the option to have you come on site with us, but you had also said, hey, the staff at Casa de Campo, they do a phenomenal job. They were 10 out of 10. They took it to a level that even Taryn and I wasn't expecting. I mean, it was a fantastic experience. So we trusted the fact that you trusted that we'd be in good hands with them. But I do think many people, including myself, my thought was that, if you hire a destination wedding planner here, they are there with you. Is that typically the case? Were we kind of the abnormality, but, were we different, or is that the norm? What can be an expectation for a couple that are thinking about hiring someone like you to help plan? Are you to be there or not?
Typically, there is an extra charge to have your state's planner there in destination. Again, going back to, we go so that same policy that we have when we place you at a hotel. I would never put you at a property where I didn't 100% believe in the on-site planning team. So I'm very transparent about it when we go through our consultation before you even sign a contract with us. We go through and we say, hey, listen, we have this package, and then I have this other package over here, and it costs a whole ton of money. And we're going to talk about that later as an upgrade, just in case you decide that you need me there, that you want me there, that you don't feel okay without me there. We'll talk about it at that point, especially when it comes to Casa de Campo. I knew I had nothing to worry about. It's the couple will always worry about that. But I have worked with this property time and time again. I know when I can, step back and say they've got it. I don't need to worry. And they, secretly on the back end, they've got my WhatsApp number in case they need to get a hold of me for something. But there are planners out there that will come. And there are planners out there that it's part of their package. The way that our business is structured, we do 30 to 40 weddings a year. For me to do the planning and be on site for every single one of those weddings isn't realistic. And so I do disclose that right away off the bat to my couples. I'm either there or I'm not. And we're going to talk about what that looks like.
Well, I think it's our perspective. Well, actually, Taryn, what do you think of Mario?
A 10 out of 10. I mean, I are you kidding? I trusted so much that, I wasn't so concerned that I needed you there. And you did instill that confidence in me from the beginning. And there were so many things that I didn't think about that you took care of that was just fantastic because that's just not what I wanted to be focused on. I already had to deal with, family and people and just other, fitting in my dress, things like normal ride woes. And you made the entire experience so much more seamless. And I honestly probably would have just panicked when I would have gotten one of those contracts if I didn't have you. And I probably would have backed out of it and been like, maybe we don't do this. Because it seemed scary. I won't lie, but you had the relationships and I felt so comfortable after, you shared more about your experience with the property and the relationships. And I did want to have you on site, but I also knew I didn't need to have you on site, which I hope speaks more.
Absolutely. These weddings can be very intimidating and everything that's involved in it is very overwhelming. But really, our entire goal is to allow our couples to get on property, be present with their guests. Text me when you need to, and I'll go deal with whatever's gone sideways. But we want you to be there and really have an amazing, that week is just really for you guys to have fun, right? And to celebrate each other. And so that's always the goal. If I ever got into a situation where I felt like, that something was going to go sideways, I'd be the first one to be on a plane and be there. But it's like I said, that's any property I put our couples at, I'm very confident they're going to deliver an amazing experience.
Mario, I would agree with everything that Taryn said. It was a 10 out of 10 experience and it absolutely delivered. I think there were other things that we really relied on your confidence level on, and many of the things Taryn's already said, but I would also add in the fact that if we had assumed that our experience of the on-site staff would be based on their email communication as an example, right, that was going to be a very different experience. And what I mean by that is the fact that, and it makes sense, they have, 3 to 4 weddings probably going on a day. And so emails were not responded to as quickly as we would probably like. And especially because we have things that we're waiting on and doing. And there are times that you would hop on the phone, you would follow up yourself many, many times, but also you saying, hey, trust me, while it may not be great from an email standpoint, they will hit and they will deliver the day of. And even when the site visit, when we went, and there was nothing that could have been more true than that statement. And so again, going back to your confidence, your belief. And I feel like, again, Taryn had said this earlier about how the similarities with our professions, when clients are seeing fear because of the market or whatever it may be, they look to the expert that's with them to help them navigate what to expect. And it's all about being able to set and deliver upon expectations. I think you did that, again, as Taryn said, 10 out of 10.
You guys, that's so amazing to hear. And I truly, truly appreciate it. These wedding teams that are on site, they are true professionals and they do a phenomenal job. And they are balancing a lot during their day, really a lot more than I feel like they probably should be, right? But this is the position that their companies put them in. And so it's half of my job is, I always like to tell my couples, I'm really your wedding concierge. I'm really there to bridge the gap, to make sure that, we know, hey, it's been 2 weeks since I've heard back from so-and-so. That's okay. I know they're working on this. I know on the back end they're working on this at this time. I will shoot them a separate message. You guys don't worry about that piece of it right now. And we'll make sure that we keep the conversation moving.
Perfect. Well, Mario, as we start to wrap this one up, what would be some of your biggest advice when considering a destination wedding? What should a couple be thinking of outside of obviously, hey, just work with Mario, he'll figure it out for you. But in general, right, what should be the top non-negotiables, the biggest money wasters? What are those type of things that you want anyone, even whether they decide to go out on their own or they're going to Google search and try to find a great destination wedding provider, what should they be keeping in mind?
Absolutely. I think the biggest piece of advice I can give our couples, focus on your vision, on what you want for your wedding. Don't invite too many people into the conversation, right? It's when you start getting all these cooks in the kitchen and you start talking about what it is, you have some people who aren't comfortable traveling. You have some people who traveled 30 years ago and think they understand what the on-site experience at a resort is going to be like. So try and just focus on your vision, that's your goal for the wedding, and then move forward with that. Of course, whether it's with me or whether it's with someone else, get yourself a destination wedding advisor. It is the best investment that you can make in your wedding day, just solely for the peace of mind, let alone all the other protections, networking, professionalism that's kind of involved in that piece of it. And then lastly, make sure that you have very real conversations with your significant other about budgets. That's what you don't want to do is get halfway into the process and realize, hey, we told Mario on his form that we have a $50,000 budget. Oh, but we really have a $20,000 budget. That's really what we can afford on this. That's going to completely change the conversation along the way. And if we've already signed contracts with certain resorts, that can get very expensive very quickly. So make sure that, this is a great exercise for a newlywed couple, right? Have the conversations, be open about it, be open about what you're comfortable with, and then move forward from there.
Would you say budget is the number one thing that couples don't consider early enough, or is there something else that you would say is not getting factored in the very beginning stages?
I would say your budget is probably going to be number one. That you need to make sure that you're having those conversations early on. And then I would say make sure you're also realistically talking about some of the family dynamics that you're going to be dealing with along the way. That does change, it can change the resort that we're at. If, all of a sudden sister is, well, won't get into that, but yeah.
I've seen so many of these things and, where the mom's like, I hate that dress. You need something else. And they're just like, what?
Yeah. Or sister is family planning, right? And all of a sudden sister's pregnant and they're going to have a brand new baby before the wedding. That can change if you want to have a destination wedding or not. So it's just trying to take into consideration what your main characters are, what that's going to look like, and planning around that.
Would you say that there's a ideal number of guests for a destination wedding by chance?
Actually, there is. So with a destination wedding, that's once you get to the 40, 50 room mark, your terms in your contract change completely. Once you get over 50 rooms, instead of $100 per room, which is pretty standard in the industry for that deposit, you could be at 10% of the room block, 15% of the room block. When you're looking at a $100,000 room block, that's a $10,000 deposit that you're making. Instead of 50 rooms would be normally $5,000. You've now doubled your cost in the beginning without even stepping into things. Most of these packages that these resorts are building out, the packages are really only built for like 30 to 50, unless you're at one of the Dreams and Secrets properties. They have packages that are up to 100 people that they build out to. But be very strategic about, how many people that you're inviting, because it will affect things. There's also a really easy equation that you can look into for your wedding. If you're inviting 100 people, you can plan on 65 to 70% of your guest list actually making it to your wedding. There's a couple things that'll affect that. There's a lot of explaining to do there, but 65 to 70% is probably the average that's going to end up making it from your original invite list. And that's a nice way to start your planning.
That's awesome, Mario. This has been super, super exciting. I know for Taryn and I, this was a fantastic experience. And honestly, Taryn, any advice that you would give other couples just from our own experience with going through destination wedding planning by chance?
Look at the link in the notes and set up a meeting with him. And if he's not a good fit, then he will find you someone who is, because this was like exactly what I've wanted in this entire experience. And I've been a bridesmaid and a maid of honor so many times. I've seen so many different things, and I knew what I didn't want. I feel like even more than I knew what I wanted. And I loved working with you, and I cannot recommend working with you enough. So that would be my biggest recommendation.
You guys are so kind. Thank you.
Mario, I'm going to throw one last question at you. It's going to be a little bit of a curveball, but this is a points and miles podcast. So I know one of the properties we had actually looked at was the Andas Papagayo in Costa Rica, right? Could have probably racked up buku Hyatt points with that. But I'm curious for the points and miles users out there that may be looking at doing a destination wedding. Now, our wedding resort was not a points property. We racked up a bunch of points with sign-up bonuses on our cards and all the different things with our spend there. But is there any niche opportunity that you can think of if it is a secrets resort or something like that where they can earn a bunch of Hyatt points from their stay? Does that work for when you do a room block, or does it not?
It doesn't actually. That's a common question that we get when people come to us and start asking about, hey, I want a room block, but I want to make sure that I can accumulate points on it. It doesn't qualify for the room blocks. And so that's always a big conversation that we need to have with the couples and also the guests. I think one of our more common properties are the AIC properties, the Hard Rock properties, and where they end up getting they have the Hard Rock membership and they want to use their points towards that. You can't actually do it with a room block. So the advantage to the room block is you get all the protections and you make sure that you don't end up, with all these penalties, and you get to hold rooms and rates for a certain amount of time. And then the downside is those member rates or the rewards points and mileage. What I would say is find a way to work it into the flights. You've got all these people flying out there, and if there's a way to collect points on that, that would be your way of collecting your points as a whole.
Perfect. Mario, where can the listeners follow you, follow Destination Weddings Expert, all that good stuff?
Absolutely. So destinationweddingsexpert.com. You can follow us. We're most active on Instagram at Destination Weddings Expert. We also have a podcast. It's Destination Wedding Planning Made Easy. That's where my entire team jumps on and we pick a new topic once a month, and we talk about whatever it is that has to do with destination wedding planning, so you can start getting into the mindset, start learning those tips and tricks that you need to efficiently plan your wedding.
Absolutely, Mario. This has been an absolute blast having you on the show today. Before we wrap up, any last final thoughts that you want to throw out to the listeners out there?
Final thoughts, enjoy the process. You have to remember that throughout this entire thing, it's all about celebrating that big day. And whether something goes a little bit sideways here, goes a little bit sideways there, in the end, that is not what you remember. You remember being there with your friends and family. You remember the amazing time that you had. You remember that crazy aunt so-and-so got drunk in the pool and, that's made a scene. That's what you remember, right? So have a good time, be present, enjoy your people, and hire a destination wedding travel advisor to help you along the way.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mario, for joining my now wife, Taryn, and I on the show today. For the listeners out there, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow us and Mario on all the social media channels. Feel free to sign up for our newsletter, our private Facebook group, as well as our WhatsApp community chat. I know this wasn't a points and miles focused episode today, but if you know of someone that's looking to get married, they love to travel, they're looking at doing a destination wedding, a lot of great information in today's episode and a direct connect that Taryn and I will both sign off on as being a 10 out of 10 experience in Mario and his team. And with that, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, do all the things, and we will see you on the next episode. Take care.